Hello there, welcome back to my channel, your go-to place for breaking down complex legal topics into simple, easy to understand concepts. Today, we are tackling a highly debated and sensitive topic. Is a false promise to marry considered a rape in Indian law? This subject not only has significant legal implications but also affects the lives of many individuals, making it crucial to understand the intricacies involved. We'll explore landmark judgments, delve into legal reasoning, and hear from legal experts on this pressing issue. In this video, we'll cover 1. The legal definition of rape in India. 2. What constitutes a false promise to marry? 3. Historical and contemporary judicial interpretations. 4. Landmark judgments and key case laws. 5. Commentary from judges and legal experts. 6. Real life implications and societal impact. By the end of this video, you'll have a thorough understanding of whether a false promise to marry can be legally considered rape in India, the rationale behind such rulings, and the decisions that impact society. Rape is defined under sections 375 of the Indian Penal Code. The definition includes several scenarios where a sexual act against a woman's consent is considered rape. One such scenario is when consent is obtained through deception or a false promise. Here is the legal text. A man is said to commit rape if he has sexual intercourse with a woman under circumstances falling under any of the 6 following descriptions. Sixthly, with or without her consent when she is under 18 years of age. Consent given by a woman believing that she is lawfully married to the man is also considered to be rape. A false promise to marry occurs when an individual assures the other person of marriage without any intention of fulfilling that promise. The deception promise can lead to other person to engage in sexual relations believing that the promise is genuine. The core issue is whether the consent obtained in such a scenario is a valid consent. Indian courts have grappled with the question of whether a false promise to marry can constitute rape. The central issue is whether consent obtained under the pretext of marriage is valid. Courts examine the intent behind the promise and the circumstances under which consent was given. Let's discuss some decisions from various courts. The first case law is Uday versus State of Karnataka. The Supreme Court in the said case addressed the issue whether a false promise to marry amounts to rape. In this case, the accused, Uday, had promised to marry the victim, leading her to consent to sexual intercourse. However, later retracted his promise. The court ruled that a false promise to marry does not necessarily constitute rape, emphasizing the importance of distinguishing between a mere breach of a promise and a fraudulent inducement. The judgment stated, it must, however, be borne in mind that the failure to keep a promise at a future uncertain date due to reasons not clear on the date of promise, be it ill health, subsequent incompatibility, or for any other reason, cannot be termed as a false promise. In the second case law, in Deepak Gulati versus State of Haryana, the Supreme Court marked a significant shift. The accused, Deepak Gulati, had induced the victim to consent to sexual intercourse by falsely promising marriage. The court held that if the promise to marry was made with the intention to deceive and solely induce the woman to consent to sexual relation, it would amount to rape. The judgment clarified The consent obtained by the accused was not a voluntary consent as it was obtained under a misconception of fact. The consent is vitiated and does not excuse the offender. The third case law is the Supreme Court further reinforced the stand in Dr. Dhruvaram Muralidhar Sonar versus State of Maharashtra. The accused had made false promises of marriage to the victim, leading to sexual relations. The court ruled that such promises made with the intent to exploit a woman sexually constitute obtaining consent under a misconception. This amounted to rape. The judgment stated where the promise to marry is false and made only to satisfy the lust of the accused. Such false promise can be said to be a misconception of fact vitiating to a woman's consent. Here are some additional case laws that I have found which will be helpful. The case law number 4 which I am going to say is Pramod Suryaban Pawar versus State of Maharashtra. In this case, the Supreme Court further elaborated on the issue. Pramod Suryaban Pawar had engaged in a sexual relationship with the victim, promising marriage but later refused. The court held that the mere breach of a promise cannot be considered rape unless it is established that the promise was made with no intention of being adhered to and solely to obtain sexual consent for sexual intercourse. The judgment stated there is a distinction between a false promise and a breach of a promise. Only when the promise is shown to be a false pretense can it be said that consent was obtained under a misconception of fact. Here are some more case laws that I have researched which will be helpful. Anurag Soni was the state of Chhattisgarh. In this case, the Supreme Court reiterated the principles laid down in previous judgments. Anurag Soni had engaged in sexual relationship with the victim under the pretext of marriage, but later refused to marry her. The court held that such deceitful conduct amounted to rape. The judgment stated when the accused made a false promise of marriage with a clear intention to deceive the victim and the victim consented to sexual intercourse based on such false promises, it constitutes rape. The next case law is Shambhu Karwar versus State of Uttar Pradesh. The court in Shambhu Karwar's case took a similar stance, emphasizing the need to protect individuals from deceitful practices. The accused had falsely promised marriage to the victim and later retracted. The court ruled that such false promises invalidate consent and amount to rape. The judgment noted the false promise of marriage when made with the intent to exploit the victim invalidates the consent obtained. Such conduct is a grave violation of the victim's autonomy and dignity. The next case law is Naresh Kumar versus State NCT of Delhi. In the recent case, the Delhi High Court examined the issue of false promises to marry. Naresh Kumar had promised to marry the victim, leading to sexual relationship. The court held that the promise was made with the intent to deceive and solely to obtain sexual consent, thus constituting rape. The judgment emphasized the court must carefully scrutinize the evidence to determine the intent behind the promise. When it is clear that the promise was made to deceive and obtain consent, it amounts to rape under section 375 of the IPC. The next case law is Vijay Chaudhary versus State of Rajasthan. In a recent ruling, the Rajasthan High Court dealt with a case where the accused had falsely promised marriage to the victim. The court held that such false promises, when made with the intent to deceive, constitute rape. The judgment stated the false promise of marriage vitiates consent and renders it invalid. Such conduct amounts to an egregious violation of the victim's trust and autonomy. The ninth case law is Rakesh Kumar versus State of Haryana. In a 2023 case, the Haryana High Court ruled on the issue of false promises to marry. Rakesh Kumar had engaged in sexual relationship with the wife under the pretext of marriage but was later retracted. The court held that such constitutes rape. The judgment noted when consent is obtained through a false promise of marriage, it is not valid consent. Such conduct amounts to rape under section 375 of the IPC. Let's discuss some key elements and facts. Consent and misconception. The core issue in these cases is whether the woman's consent was obtained through a false promise. The law aims to protect individuals from being deceived into sexual relations under false pretense. Second one is the intent of the accused. Courts critically assess whether the accused has the intention to marry at the time of making the promise. If it's proven that the promise was never meant to be fulfilled, the act is deemed deceitful, amounting to rape. Third is the evidence and circumstances. Each case is judged on the facts and circumstances. The evidence proving the intent to deceive plays a crucial role in the court's decisions. Testimonies, communication records, and the behavior of the accused are meticulously examined. Here are some commentaries and perspectives of judges regarding the cases that was discussed a few moments ago. Justice A.K. Sikri commentary. Justice Sikri in the Deepak Gulati case remarked that the essence of consent is that it should be free and voluntary. If consent is obtained by putting up a false facade of marriage, it is not free consent. He emphasized that the law aims to safeguard the dignity and autonomy of individuals. He stated, consent is a product of the exercise of a free and unrestrained right to make a choice. When such a right is weakened by fraud or deception, it cannot be said that the consent was obtained. The interpretation of false promises to marry as rape has significant real-life implications. It affects not only the victims but also the broader societal norms regarding consent, autonomy, and the sanctity of promises. Let's discuss the impact on victims. Victims of false promises to marry often face severe emotional and psychological trauma. The societal stigma associated with such cases can lead to further victimization. Legal recognition of the plight as rape can provide a sense of justice and closure. Next is the deterrence effect. Recognizing false promises to marry as rape can serve as a deterrent against such deceptive practices. It sends a strong message that the legal system does not condone deceitful behavior and also values the autonomy and dignity of individuals. Third is the social awareness. These legal interpretations contribute to greater social awareness and the importance of informed consent and the consequences of deceit. It helps in educating the public about the legal and moral responsibilities associated with the promises of marriage. In conclusion, the question of whether a false promise to marry constitutes rape under Indian law is complex and fact-dependent. The courts have progressively moved towards a more victim-centric approach, recognizing that consent obtained through deceit is not true consent. The intent behind the promise, the circumstances under which consent was given, and the evidence presented play crucial roles in the judicial determination. So let's recap what we have learned from this video. 1. We defined rape under Indian law and explored what constitutes a false promise to marry. 2. We discussed key judgments like Uday versus State of Karnataka, Deepak Gulati versus State of Haryana, and Dr. Dhruvaram Muralidhar Sonar versus State of Maharashtra. 3. We have highlighted additional case laws including Pramod, Suryaban Pawar, versus State of Maharashtra, Anurag Soni versus State of Chhattisgarh, Shambhu Karwar versus State of Uttar Pradesh, Naresh Kumar versus State NCT of Delhi, Vijay Chaudhary versus State of Rajasthan, and Rakesh Kumar versus State of Haryana. 4. We have examined the crucial elements courts consider such as consent, intent and evidence. 5. We have included commentaries from Justice A.K. Sikri, Indu Malhotra and D.Y. Chandrachud, offering valuable insights into the judicial mindset. 6. We have discussed real-life implications and the societal impact of these legal interpretations. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest videos. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, leave them in the comments below. See you in the next video. Take care and